In this quick introduction video, I want to demonstrate how easily you can make validation of user input interactive with isomorphic validation library. For this small example, I've already prepared some HTML and CSS so that the form would look more or less decent. I'm going to add outlines around the form fields, indicating validity of their content, display some icons and error messages, and also make submit button enabled and disabled according to the form field's validity state. To validate email and password, I will need two predicate functions from the library called validator. Here I'm grouping email and password validations in order to use the resultant validation object as an input event handler. To display outlines around the form fields, we'll need this function called applyOutline. This function sets the CSS outline property of the specified element depending on validation result. We are connecting outlines to the form fields so that every time a field gets validated, a particular outline will be applied. Now let's see it in action. The fields are outlined in red when they contain invalid content, and in green when they contain valid content. To control access to the submit button, we need to connect this function to the group's validity state, so whenever it changes, availability of the button will be changed in accordance with it. Now when both fields are filled out with valid data, the button gets enabled, and when at least one field contains invalid data, the button gets disabled. Here in applyOutline function invocations, we are overriding event targets because the input elements are wrapped in label elements, so that outline is applied to the label elements. If we omit this argument, the effect will be applied to an event target, which in this case is the email input element. We can also create deferred effects and specify different delay for the valid and invalid state. Now if we type in incorrect data, the red outline appears 2 seconds later. This may be useful in order not to scare users with red alert right immediately when they typed in wrong data. Now since the outline effect is deferred, the submit button gets enabled faster than the last filled out field indicates its valid state. To prevent it, we can defer the access effect in the same way. Let's see what we got here. Now the submit button gets enabled in 1 second after both fields get filled out with valid data, and it gets disabled without delay. But it takes 2 seconds for a field to indicate state change from valid to invalid, which seems counterintuitive. Let's fix it. we need to retain the delay for the valid state and omit the delay for the invalid state. Then we connect an outline effect with the newly created state values object to validity state change of each field. Now, as you can see, it still takes 2 seconds to indicate invalid state, but when it comes to state change from valid to invalid, it happens without delay. Let's replace the default outline colors with more vibrant. For that, we need to specify the value property for each state. What if we need to indicate only invalid state of fields with outline? In this case, we'll just leave outline values empty for the valid state. Also, 1 second for enabling the submit button seems too slow. With less variety of outline colors, the form looks more moderate and doesn't light up like a Christmas tree. Let's add some icons to the form fields using the function called applyBox. We'll need to create state values objects and define icons with delays for each validity state. The content for this value property here for the applyBox function can be any string, HTML, SVG, or a function which returns any of that. The position property tells where to display the content in relation to a target element. I want to display the pen icon when user is typing something in. And here I want the pen icon to be replaced with the icon representing validation result every time a form field gets validated. Since the invalid state of form field is represented by a red outline, there is no need to display an icon representing the same state. Now both icons appear one on top of another, but I want the V icon to be placed next to a form field. and it needs to be adjusted a little bit to the left. Now both icons are where they were intended to be, but they are displayed both at a time. I wanted them to replace one another during user input. In order to achieve that, we need to connect both apply box effects together by means of the same effect ID. Here I'll be using field names as effect IDs. When two or more effect functions have the same effect ID, they cancel one another. Now let's see what we got here. While user is typing, the pen icon is being displayed until it is replaced with either the check icon or an empty string, depending on validity state. This is exactly the effect I wanted to achieve. Finally, let's add error messages. The constraint method accepts an optional object in which we can pass messages. To render our messages, we will need this function called renderFirstError. We need to create one more stateValues object to display our messages. The delay is the same as we used for redOutline, and for the value we'll be using that render function in which we need to pass the same property name as we used for error messages. The message box will be displayed under a form field and stretched up to its longest side. In the same way as we already did with outlines and icons, we need to connect an apply box effect with that error message object to the validated state of the form fields. Let's see what we ended up with. Some styling is required. Let's put the finishing touches. And that's it. This is the final result.